Hi everyone, Dave here at East Rosebud Fly and Tackle in Billings, Montana. Today I'm going to show you how to tie an old streamer called a Bighorn Special. It doesn't take a lot of materials, some saddle hackle, a hook, but the real trick in this fly is getting these hackles set before you tie them. This is what happens if you try to put on 6 hackles without setting your hackles first, and I'll show you what I mean by that. What you first have to do, these wings are composed of a pair of yellow saddle hackles, back to back, and this is one hen brown hackle on top. But in order to achieve this and to get these hackles straight, first of all you have to size your hackles, and then I'll show you briefly what I use to set these wing feathers together. So this is just a saddle pack. This happens to be UV2. Well, the first trick is you need to pick out 4 saddles that have a similar type of shape on the tip. I'm just going to grab 2 of them here. And then we size this. This is my hook in the vise right now. When we size this, I want this about, maybe a shank and a little bit longer for the tail end of it. So this would be my tie-in spot. However, I'm going to use a little bit of this hackle on the rear to help me tie this in. Tying in the stems themselves and them stems alone is just a recipe for disaster. It just doesn't happen. So I'm going to end up using some of this hackle up here to tie down. Secondarily, it's very difficult to find good quality rooster hackle in this size. So by using some of this saddle hackle to tie down on the hook, I'm increasing the size of my hook, which means that my hackle will look bigger than it actually is. So I simply grab my second feather, try to line it up as closely as I can with the first one, and then we'll make sure we get them sized here correctly. And again, make sure that they're married front to back, shiny side to dull side. Clean this hackle up till I get it about exactly the same size as the other. So right now I have 2 hackles that the tips match. The size is very similar on them. Now the way to marry these hackles is to use some of this tear mender. Tear mender is a liquid latex, so it dries very rubbery. It only takes a minute or so to dry. And all I'm going to do is put a drop on some kind of container. Shake it up good first, and just a drop on there is all you need. And then I'm just going to use my bodkin and just lay a very, very thin line of this, and I'll show you this in just a second. A very thin line of this right on the quill itself. And then all I need to do is gently pick up the second feather, lay it on top of that so my tips align and the barbs are all equal in length, and then just carefully just press it down carefully on top of the latex from the previous feather, and then you'll have a married pair like this. Make sure that they're lined up. Set them aside for a few minutes to let that latex dry. Do the same thing on the other side, and then finally on the front side, the shiny side that's going to be out, I simply lay in, this is just a hen saddle hackle. I like the color on it. So again, I picked off 2 feathers that are of the equal size. To do that, just pick 2 that are side by side. Also, pluck the bases of it to make sure that the feather is the same length. And then put another little line of this latex on the outside of the feathers, quill, and lay that on top of it. That's how you marry your wing sets before you ever tie them in. There is no way in hell that you can tie these in loose and keep everything straight and lined up. The fly itself is very simple. I'm just using some 8/0 Beavis thread, black. I'm going to wind a nice thread base here, just about half a shank long. Alright, and I'll bring it up to about the 75% point. Now I have, like I say, I have married wings. This constitutes 3 feathers, 2 of the yellow saddles and 1 of the hen on top. You lay that against the side of the feather, and as you can see, I'm not tying over the bare quills. It's very difficult to keep those from slipping and rotating. I'm actually going to tie over some of these hackle quills. It makes a much more secure mount. It also allows me to build up that area underneath where the hackle is going to be so the hackle sizes appropriately. I'm going to take 1 soft wrap, a second wrap, and pull straight up. Check my alignment here. Make sure it's where I want it on the side of the feather, off side of the hook. A few more wraps forward, and then snip off any excess fibers. If I were going to do a lot of these, I would buy a pair of the American rooster necks. That way it'd be much easier to pair your feathers up. You'd simply pluck feathers off side by side. It'd be much easier to get your feathers the same width. And on this side, I'm just going to do the identical same thing. Try to keep my tips lined up. Keep the hackle on my side of the hook. Take a couple of soft wraps. Tighten it. Make sure my feather is down along the side of the shank. Nice tight wraps to keep everybody together there. And then clip off the excess. Now to make sure we have a nice smooth underbody to hackle with, we'd wrap my thread forward and even this up. If you have lumps and bumps on your under thread, the hackle will wrap in lumps and bumps. Alright, I just have a brown saddle hackle, about the biggest I can find, which is what actually size as right at a size 12, and we're using a size 8 3x long streamer hook. So I'm simply going to peel off some of these fibers. You always want to peel off some extra fibers on the side that's going to be wrapped first. I'm going to wrap this with the shiny side towards me so that the fibers lay back. You want that first wrap to be bare hook or bare shank. That helps to keep that second wrap, the feathers, from flaring, which you don't want. So I'm simply going to lie it on my side of the hook, shiny side towards me, and bind it down tightly, trying to keep that under thread base nice and smooth. And all we have to do is pick our hackle straight up. We want our first wrap as close to the base of the wings as we can get, and then we're just going to heavily wrap this hackle in close turns. It helps if you tip your hackle back a little bit as you wrap it. That helps allow your hackle to wrap tighter. This fly can be fished both dry and wet. It's an ideal fly to fish on a downstream swing. This fly is meant to show a broadside profile to the fish, and the colors, being yellow and brown, I think are to imitate a young brown trout. And of course, trout are predators and they have no problems eating their own. They're very territorial about it. So they need to see the profile of this fly to be able to recognize what it is. You can also fish this on a sink tip line. Do the same thing, a nice downstream swing, mend and mend and mend to keep this fly broadside in the profile. Not a difficult fly to tie, certainly nothing technical, but you owe it to yourself to try some of this tear mender when you want to marry flexible materials like these saddle wings. All right? If you have any questions, let us know. As always, thanks for joining. We'll see you next time.